Firstly, Kaffe, I'd like to say welcome to the University of Huddersfield. It's a real pleasure to have you. We're really fortunate here to be located in the Pennine landscape, so we're really close to loads of fantastic British landscapes. I've read that you're really influenced by Britain and its kind of natural landscapes. So I'd like to know, what's your favourite part of Britain?
My favourite part of Britain? Oh, it probably has to be Scotland, because it is so wild and so barren. And usually I love trees, so I find it interesting that I fell in love with a landscape that is like an animal's pelt. You know, it's that the colors there are so intense. You know, the bracken and lichen and the wonderful wildflowers and things like that. So that's where I first tuned into the color of the British Isles.
Yeah.
And my first knitting was taking beautiful Shetland yarns that reflected the poetry of the landscape into the yarn, and so I'm very associated with that landscape. With
that Scottish
But I mean, I love
wilderness.
all northern landscapes. So you know, this is north enough for me to get very excited, and particularly this very strange, subtle winter coloring is very beautiful right now.
I think there's something in the greyness of the skies up here that really brings out colour in quite an interesting way.
Yes, it does.
Some of our students have done some yarn bombing in your honour today.
Right.
So I'd like to know, have you ever done any yourself, or have you ever put any of your knits back into the landscape?
I wish I could say I had. I wish I could say I covered a forest. And I mean, in my imagination, I've often thought of, you know, great, wonderful, knitted, crazy things that would cover outdoor spaces. But I had an exhibition in Bath recently at the American Museum, and we yarn bombed everything leading up to the exhibition, including a huge tree in front and all the lamp posts and everything. So by the time people actually got to the exhibition space, there was all this color. And we also filled a tree full of lanterns made with my fabric. So that was a very, very colorful and exciting thing to do. But I love all this yarn bombing people are doing, you know, covering statues and you know, fire hydrants and all these things. It's quite wonderful to see people exploring color and texture in that way.
Definitely within an urban environment as well. It's really exciting to see that, isn't it?
It is.
There's a lot of emerging research at the moment that we're seeing the students pick up on knit and well-being and kind of mental well-being. And I know that you've previously said you find knit really relaxing and kind of the process of knitting helps you think through things. Does that change the longer, you know, you've been knitting for years now, has that ever changed, or now that knit is a career for you, is it less relaxing? Is it less therapeutic?
No, it's more so than ever. And I knit very fast now, which is very satisfying, you know. One of the things that was interesting about seeing these students work, these tiny little pieces that have been struggled over. And, you know, I mean, I sat down yesterday and started a blanket that was like this big, and I'm about that far into it now, all filled with color and pattern. It is the most wonderful way of exploring color and pattern, to knit it and let it build and live dangerously and all of that. So, to me, it's color that is the medicine that makes us all healthy and happy to be alive. You know, it's a celebration. Even the most subtle color. And it's been wonderful seeing the students work, to see the glimmers of color that, even though they're tiny little pieces, they're very intense, and I can see the color possibilities. And it's very nice to see there's a real elegance of color thinking here that I'm sure is down to you a lot, you know, instructing and helping them to get into that be a little more complex about their color.
Yeah.
And so that's very, very nice to see.
Yeah.
But some of the taste level is beautiful. I'm really surprised.
Yeah. I feel personally that a lot of that comes from the drawing and
Yes.
working things through drawing.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you've picked up on that.
Yeah.
It's good, nice to hear.
Yeah.
So lastly, I know you've got a great eye for colour. And you've picked up on some great colour that you've seen in the students' work today. Are there any sort of emerging artists or knitters that you think have a superb use of colour that you think the students should be looking at?
Well, you know, Matisse just had a show in London, those paper cutouts. I mean, I was walking 2 feet off the ground when I left that exhibition. You just felt lighter than air, just to cut up those beautiful big shapes in cobalt blue and magenta and, you know, acid green, and throw them onto a wall. It's just absolutely one of the scale. And that's what I would love to see these students do, to get into scale, you know, to do some big collage work and, you know, knock us out with a big image. Yeah, I think Matisse, Emil Nolde, the German expressionist, is a wonderful colorist. But I also get very turned on by very subtle artists like Morandi, who painted just little rows of bottles in kind of cream and beige and taupe, and then occasionally a tiny bit of lavender or a little bit of lemon yellow would come into these kind of very neutral little paintings. Beautiful, beautiful, elegant. So those painters I love. I don't know, there's, very often when I don't like an artist's work very much, but I'll like their color sense, I'll just go home and I'll play with the colors that they use. I go to a lot of modern art, and I don't like the concepts particularly, but I love the accidental things that happen with color on the edges of painting. So I'm very excited to go to any art museum and see what's being played with. I mean, I remember in the Tate, they had a wonderful, Tate Modern, they had a piece that was just a rope with old bits of soap on it. And it was, you know, came from Italy. It was an early Italian of the pauvre art, the poor artist, you know. And I just love the fact that the soap was lime green and pink and lavender and pale yellow. And it was just wonderful. It was beautiful color. So those are the kind of things I would pick up on.
Lovely. So just getting out there and seeing what's...
See anything, whether you agree with it or not, you could walk away with an interesting color idea.
Fantastic.
For sure.
I love what you're saying about scale as well. I think that's a great message for the students.
Yeah.
I'm always trying to get them.
I have a niece who teaches art by having people paint out great big cards of color, big pieces of paper, and then you rip them up and you make collage out of it, and it frees up. I mean, I've had painters go to her workshops and suddenly explode with color because they're instantly working on scale. They can't do something that's itty bitty.
Tiny,
you know, they have to work these big torn pieces, rough and free, and that would be interesting to see. Because these people have a sense of color here today, and I would love to see it just get bigger and fill the space, knock us out.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Kaffe. I'd like to thank you again for coming and visiting us today. Great to have you here.
Lovely to come here.
The University of Huddersfield, inspiring tomorrow's professionals.